While Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost doesn't quite reach the same heights as Zombie Island, it's still a really enjoyable mystery with some memorable additions to the franchise. And let's be honest, we all know the one thing everyone remembers this movie for: the Hex Girls. Even if you've never actually seen this movie, you've probably heard of the Hex Girls. Thorn, Dusk, and Luna have become some of the most popular characters in the entire Scooby-Doo franchise, and it's easy to see why. They're fun, charismatic, and their songs are genuinely catchy. They're introduced as gothic rock musicians, and while the movie initially wants you to suspect they might be connected to supernatural events, they're ultimately just really likable characters who are just caught in the middle of the mystery. It's no surprise they continue to show up in later Scooby-Doo series and movies. They made an instant impression. The soundtrack overall is another highlight. Like Zombie Island, this movie uses original songs to enhance the atmosphere instead of just relying on traditional orchestral score. The Hex Girls' performance are still memorable over 25 years later. The other standout is Tim Curry. Tim Curry has one of those instantly recognizable voices, and he brings so much personality and charm to Ben Ravencroft. He's funny, charismatic, and believable as a famous horror writer who's fascinated by the supernatural. Even when he's simply explaining the town's history or telling stories about his ancestor Sarah Ravencroft, he commands your attention. He's clearly having a great time with this role, and that enthusiasm comes through in every scene. The setting is another strength. A quiet New England town with centuries-old witch legends is the perfect backdrop for a Scooby-Doo mystery. The fall atmosphere, old architecture, forests, and historical landmarks all give the movie a cozy Halloween feeling that makes it perfect to revisit every October. Unfortunately, I do think the mystery itself is a little weaker than Zombie Island. Without getting into spoilers, I thought it became pretty obvious who the villain was fairly early on. The movie still throws in a few twists and red herrings, but compared to some of Scooby-Doo's best mysteries, this one isn't particularly difficult to solve. That said, knowing who the villain is doesn't completely ruin the experience. The fun comes from seeing how everything unfolds and learning the truth behind the legend. I also appreciate that this movie continues experimenting with real supernatural elements. After decades of every ghost turning out to be someone in a costume, these late 90s movies weren't afraid to lean into actual magic and folklore. It helped make this era of Scooby-Doo feel fresh and unpredictable. The animation remains excellent. Warner Brothers kept the same high-quality direct-to-video style introduced in Zombie Island, and it still looks fantastic. The backgrounds are detailed, the character animation is expressive, and the movie has a darker visual style without ever becoming too scary for kids. The gang themselves are just as entertaining as always. Scooby and Shaggy provide plenty of laughs, Velma gets to put her intelligence to work, Fred remains the optimistic leader, and Daphne continues to show she's far more capable of the old stereotype of needing to be rescued. If you have one criticism beyond the somewhat predictable mystery, it's that outside the Hex Girls and Tim Curry, there honestly isn't a whole lot that sticks with me after the movie ends. The movie is consistently entertaining while you're watching it, but unlike Zombie Island, there aren't many scenes that have become iconic. The Hex Girls completely steal the show, and Tim Curry delivers a standout performance, but the rest of the film is simply a solid Scooby-Doo adventure rather than an unforgettable one. Still, solid is not really an insult. We're talking about one of the strongest eras in the franchise. Even if it doesn't quite match its predecessor, Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost is well worth watching, especially around Halloween. If you're a fan of Scooby-Doo, spooky mysteries, or you just want to see what the Hex Girls first appeared, this is an easy recommendation. For me, it's an A-, a 9 out of 10, and a 4 out of 5 stars.